Okay, so I'm Baptiste. I'm coming from Universitat Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona, and I'm very excited to present this joint work with Eugenio, Clerico, and Gergely, who are sitting over here. So today's talk is about providing a novel framework to study the generalization error of any statistical learning algorithm when the data are no longer assumed to be IID. So this approach is inspired by the recent work of Lugosi and Noy and their so-called framework online-to-PAC conversions. So the outline of the talk would be the following. I'll first briefly summarize what online-to-PAC is in the IID setting, and then I will present our main contribution, which consists in extending the result to deal with the non-IID assumption. And finally, I will show you some instantiation of this main result. Okay, so we have all heard in the previous talk of statistical learning. Let me just refresh so that the notation are clear. So I'm denoting Sn the training sample sets of n data points Zi. The Zi are assumed to be IID drawn from a distribution mu that we don't know. I denote W the class of hypothesis and PW the class of distribution over W. And the loss function L measures the quality of hypothesis W on the data instance Z. And here I will consider a randomized learning algorithm, so algorithm that maps the training sample Sn to an output distribution that I denote PW and Sn. And usually in statistical learning, we're interested in studying the generalization gap, defined as the difference between the test loss and the training loss. And here, because I consider randomized learning algorithm, I define the generalization error as being the expectation of this gap. And here, importantly, note that the expectation only integrates on the randomness of the output of this algorithm. Okay, so the idea of Lugosi and Noy is to bridge this quantity with another concept coming from online learning theory, which is the regret, which I guess everyone is familiar with. And the way they do so is by considering the following sequential games. So at each round, there is learner that picks distribution PT in the class distribution W. The environment reveals the cost CT, which is kind of like the minus generalization gap on one data instance point. And the learner pays the costs, which is defined as the expectation of the cost revealed by the environment under the probability distribution as picked at the beginning of the run. And finally, at the end of the round, the ZT is revealed. So this game is a bit weird, I think, yeah, there are many things to say about it. So I will be happy to discuss about it in the post session. What I want to emphasize here is that because we define the costs in such a weird way, we have immediately this connection between the generalization gap and the cumulative minus cost of the learner. So in particular, if I rewrite the definition of the generalization I gave in the previous slide, I have the following immediate equality with respect to this the dot product that I defined above. And now, if I add and subtract the cumulative cost of the learner over the rounds, I have the following identity, which is the famous online-to-PAC conversion. So note that on the first term, I have exactly like the regrets with respect to the fixed player which would have played, the comparator which would have played at each round the output of the randomized algorithm, plus a reminder term that is exactly the minus cumulative cost of the learner. So let me rephrase it here. So the idea of Lugosi and Noy is to remark that in this IID setting, the reminder term Mn is in fact a martingale with respect to the natural filtration. And therefore, this can lead immediately to this fashion PAC-based bounds, where I get kind of this result by just bounding the regret with the tool of online learning theory and the martingale by usual concentration bounds inequality. Okay, so the question now is, how can we go beyond this IID setting? Can we exploit some structure if we do some assumptions? So now let's consider that the ZT are drawn from a stochastic process, like there is joint distribution nu. I will assume some stationarity to enforce that each point has the same marginal, and so therefore the generalization error is well defined in some sense. And finally, this will be our main assumption, which is this mixing condition that basically states that a data point becomes almost independent of the past after this step. And the idea is that is what I kind of like tried to picture here, is that then I can like take the subsample of data points of block Z1, ZD plus 1, etc., and consider them as a subsample of almost independent data points. So here is like the assumption, the formal assumption in the paper. And now, if we come back to the generalization decomposition, the decomposition still holds because I did not do any assumption on the data. However, what does not hold anymore is that Mn is no longer a martingale. And the reason why Mn was martingale before, and this is really like the important point, is that in our online learning game, we were enforcing the learner to pick his distribution with respect to the past. And because the point were whole IID, PT was decorrelated of the cost function. Now, however, because we consider this non-IID setting, PT is highly correlated with CT if we consider the game I introduced before. But we know that because of the mixing condition, if we force the online learner to pick his distribution based on a past that is sufficiently far away, then we can decorrelate this distribution with the cost. So this is the main trick, adding some delay in the generalization game. So it's really the same game, instead that in the last bullet point, instead of ZT minus 1, it's ZT minus D plus 1 that is revealed. And we can show that with this new generalization game with delay, that Mn has a nice behavior that almost behaves as a martingale up to this phi d term, which measures the rate of the dependence decay. And so now, let me put everything together. So we combine this result with the online-to-PAC result, and we state our main contribution, which is to say that under our mixing assumption, any statistical learning algorithm has a generalization error that is bounded by a delayed regret algorithm with respect to the fixed comparator A, plus this concentration inequality that I just stated above. And here, the idea is that you may wonder, what is this regret dn? Like, what is the rate? So in fact, we have a lot of answers coming from the literature. So in particular from Weinberger and Ordenlich, we know that under some assumptions, the regret of any online learning algorithm suffering a rate of square root of n can be turned via some black box machinery by an online delayed online version, which suffers square root of dn. And therefore, you see that the rate of the regrets really matches the rates of the probabilistic part. So the question is now, what D should we pick? Because you see that there is like this non-trivial dependency between the fact that if I increase D, then of course the magnitude of this coefficient will decay, but on the other end, the regrets will grow. Okay, so this is our last part of instantiation. So we considered two types of mixing, which are the usual one in the literature. So the geometric mixing, which corresponds to an exponential decay, and the algebraic mixing, which is a bit slower, considering like polynomial decay. And the idea is that by setting the D to a certain quantity that depends only on the logarithmic size of the sample, we're able to achieve something that really looks like the previous bound I showed you at the beginning, up to some logarithmic factor and a linear dependence in tau, where tau is kind of like the characteristic time of the exponential decay. So the conclusion is somehow that that in the geometric mixing, we are really close to the IID mixing. And this amounts to say that the effective size of the sample is a tau fraction smaller than the true sample when it comes to generalization. However, for the algebraic mixing, it's more slower, of course, and we tend to recover the IID setting only if we are in a high regime for the exponent of the polynomial. So yeah, so just like to quickly conclude, I put some bullet points. I just want to say that yeah, I think we are like very exciting about this framework. We think it can lead to really a new perspective of studying the generalization error for dealing with like non-IID data, which are more realistic, or more close to the reality in some sense. And in particular, we have done a follow-up paper that got accepted to AStats that kind of generalized this idea where we have this, we had this like a graph, which was just a straight line. We kind of generalize it to any type of graph structure. And yeah, I would be happy to discuss about it during the poster session. So yeah, thank you very much for your time. And,
So thanks for a very nice presentation. I was wondering how LW is defined in your setting. Is it like if you don't have IID data, then maybe it's not the same over time, right?
So the loss function, you mean?
No, like the capital L. So that's like the expected loss, right?
Yeah, the test loss. Yeah. So okay. So you mean in the non-IID setting?
Yes.
Yeah. So the idea. Yeah. So the idea is that here we consider that. So the okay. So your okay. So maybe. Yeah, so here the test loss in the non-IID setting is because we have this stationary assumption. We assume that each point has the same marginal, and the idea is that LW is defined as the expectation of the loss of LW, where W is drawn by Z prime, where Z prime would be an independent copy of all the process with the same marginal.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.